New Hampshire. Not long ago, 1,400 people were arrested there for demonstrating against construction on the grounds that the plant would hurt the environment. And finally this evening, if you don't know what a 100-year-old Wookiee is, he or it is seen here on the left, chances are you're going to find out.
Star Wars is a ridiculous franchise, not only in its content because, come on, but also in the sheer scope it has given the fact that it isn't even half a century old yet. This one movie spawned 11 other movies and thousands of comics and dozens of seasons of television and hundreds of books and a bunch of games and lunchboxes and action figures and Legos and all this weird Ewok shit and also whatever this was.
And I see your Schwartz is as big as mine. Now let's see how well you handle it.
But you may be asking, hey, everyone has talked about Star Wars. Why are you adding another 2-hour rant to the pile of 2-hour Star Wars rants? You see, a few years ago, I made a Star Wars video ranking all of the movies, and recently I found it, and it sucked.
In this way.
It was bad.
Yes, it happens at the beginning when they're rescuing Princess Leia in the first.
Yeah, that's enough of that.
And instead of forgetting about it and going along with my life, I decided to make this monstrosity of the video and share it with the world. So come down this rabbit hole with me. Join me, and together we can rule the galaxy. Wait, no, I mean, we can understand Star Wars in its entirety and pick apart what makes it work and not. So today a journey must begin. The journey of Jen. What the fuck is happening?
Star Wars The Phantom Menace was the most disappointing thing since my son.
Did you know this movie is kinda garbage? As usual, let's start with the good stuff. I don't think I have to tell you that the music is fantastic. The fact that it didn't get a Best Original Score nomination honestly astounds me. The production design is honestly really nice, and a lot of the character and creature designs are iconic. The fight choreography is pretty cool, and Sheev says the thing. Now for the bad stuff. From its basic concept, the movie already makes no goddamn sense. So this movie is called The Phantom Menace, and the titular character is on screen for 6 minutes. Darth Maul is on screen less than Anakin's mother. He's on screen less than R2-D2. To me, it makes sense that this movie would be about hunting down Darth Maul for the majority of the runtime. Literally not much has to change. All you have to do is have the title crawl say, "There's some pimp with horns stirring shit all over the galaxy. The Senate has been getting lots of complaints through HR that maybe they should do something about it. So in order to appease the annoying peasants, the Jedi Council sent 2 dumbasses to find this freaking restore order to the galaxy. I guess." Then you can immediately cut to them landing on Naboo, and the rest of the movie can play out almost the same. They can be following clues and end up stranded on Tatooine because the ship exploded or something. And then they see Dennis the Menace, and they have to report back to the Jedi Council. Then they get an inside scoop from Sheev. The Menace is going to be on Naboo or something, and they fight to the death. Then the writing can have more focus, since unlike in the actual film, there's a clear defined goal, which is to find Maul. But the actual movie doesn't do that shit, so let's talk about that for far too long. This movie has to have one of the lamest openings out of any Star Wars movie. Actually, scratch that. It definitely does. You know all of those concise and engaging title crawls that set the mood for a thrilling adventure in outer space? Well, this one's second sentence tells about the oh-so-exciting tax dispute. Ah, yes. Economic politics to kick off a Star Wars movie. So already we have something that just doesn't logic, and we're literally a minute into the movie. So riddle me this, Batman. Why in the hell would they send law enforcement officers as ambassadors to settle a trade dispute? Do they in fact have an associate's degree from Vermtech? Imagine if there was a trade dispute where hypothetically Britain had blockaded all of our ports and regulated everything that we could and would receive. Not that that necessarily happened. Imagine if, to settle that, a member of the Senate secretly sent 2 cops, one of whom was a trainee, to figure that shit out. Does anyone else see what might not work in this scenario? Alright, we'll move on. The structure of this film is very odd. After the initial scenes on the Trade Federation ship, things stop feeling like plot points and more like we're trying to get back on track. They go to Naboo because they have no options. They go to Thneed Palace because they have no options. They have to leave the planet because they have no options. Then we dedicate a very large amount of the movie to basically a cinematic side tangent. They land on the planet because they have no options. They make a deal with Watto because they have no options. They bet money on a child because they have no goddamn options. And then they get to Coruscant after an hour of talking about needing to get there, and we're there for like 15 minutes. I thought you really had to get there. If you're gonna build up this place, actually take time to make it make sense. Then we go to fucking Naboo again, and like, why? Go somewhere new. And then the cycle continues. Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan fight Maul because he magically appears, and they have no options. Anakin has to battle because he's stuck in a plane and has no options. This movie exists because George had no options. That's a lie. George is doing fine without this movie. All right. I guess I might as well mention this because I'm pissed off enough already. Georgie shouldn't have made slavery a part of this movie. Like, legit, no one in the boardroom was like,
dude, uncool.
And enough people were chill with it that it is in a movie that made $1 billion. Awesome. Like, aside from the fact that let's not make an American white people slavery movie, there's just some fucked up implications to this. Why is the Jewish stereotype the slave owner? That's a bit weird if you ask me. Also, this movie can be perceived in a way that Mr. Jin is technically participating in slave trade when he frees Anakin. And there's also really weird implications to betting Anakin on pod racing. And did I mention the comedy? Oh boy, the comedy. This movie is full of such masterful humorous writing, like this, and this, and of course this.
You were right about one thing, Master. The negotiations were short.
Do you get it? How get it? Said it earlier. Get it? George, you get it? That's not right. Did you get it? Now I need you to look at me in my eyeballs. You aren't looking. Look into my fucking eyeballs. Jar Jar Binks and Watto are the two best characters in this movie. And they are also the most overtly racist things this series has ever produced. They're the only actual characters. Jar Jar and Watto get funnier and more entertaining every viewing because they're the only people with any ounce of life. This film is jam-packed with loads of brilliant and talented actors. Like this one, and this one, and this one. Well, I don't know about this one. He plays the same character in every movie he's in, but he is really good at being that guy. But every single physical actor in this movie could be replaced with a cardboard cutout and nothing would change. If I put this stock photo of Padme over this scene, it has the same goddamn effect as if I didn't.
I ask you to help us. No, I beg you to help us. I ask you to help us. No, I beg you to help us.
Literally, what is the point of getting all these big names and just have them all play the same character, that character being Liam Neeson? What is the point of getting Mr. L. Jackson if you aren't going to let him say any colorful language? Come on, dude. Qui-Gon is the only character that could have gotten a pass with the performance. It makes sense that he would be just this wise and somewhat monotone figure. It would ground the story, except every fucking character in the movie is Qui-Gon.
I'm sorry for my behavior, Master. It's not my place to disagree with you about the boy.
I am Queen Amidala of the Naboo. I come before you in peace.
The Senate would revoke their trade franchise, and they'd be finished.
I present Queen Amidala, recently elected ruler of the Naboo, who speaks on our behalf.
I genuinely prefer if every human in this movie was replaced with the Will Smith fish from Shark Tale. That's right. I would genuinely rather watch.
Hey, don't sweat it, Sykes. A lot of white fish can't do it.
Than all of these people I'm flashing on screen. At least if Oscar the Shark Slayer was every character in this movie, I would feel something. I would at least feel an insatiable rage towards this movie. But despite how long I've talked about this film, I truly feel nothing. Because Phantom Menace is a nothing movie. This is only the beginning, everybody.
Well, you got me. By all accounts, it doesn't make sense.
Attack of the Clones is hot, steaming, disgusting garbage. Okay, let's talk about the good shit. The music is great. John Williams did it again and still got zero recognition. Like, I understand that John already had a nomination, but you should have, like, given him 2. I like some of the character designs. The clones are iconic. The memes were funny. Like, this one will be in every future video I can possibly fit it into.
Wow!
What do you know?
So let's get something out of the way really fast. This movie looks like ass. There are some nice looking scenes, but this movie has really odd coloration. There are some very clashing tones throughout every room in the sets, and they got some of the ugliest fucking colors for some of the backgrounds. What is this sky? What is this sky? What's odd to me is so many clips online look 1000% better than the version currently on Disney+. If anyone knows why that is, please tell me, because it's driving me nuts. The CG looks impressively shitty here. In the last movie, it was definitely used in more moderation, and where it was used, it was mostly on Gungans that are allowed to be cartoony, or battle droids which move very rigidly. In this one, however, everything looks about as good as a 1997 video game. Which sucks because it takes me out of the movie every 5 seconds. One of the biggest examples is the scene with the floating pear. Like, you could have done this practically, man. Like the good old glass pane trick. If it's good enough for Kubrick, it's good enough for you. But instead, you did it in post, and now we have this cursed image forever. Thanks, George. This movie is where the whole justify everything with the Force kind of started. Here it's times when Anakin just magically does the perfect math to figure out how to jump from his speeder to the assassin's speeder. Like, there's no way this dumbass calculated air resistance in his head, so I guess it was the Force or something, I don't know. On this watch, I had a revelation that kind of shocked me, so bear with me. This movie has an interesting concept. There's a neat story here somewhere, and it's still really damn boring. And that's because the characters suck. All the Jedi characters are so dry and bland. They don't emote, they just say words with vague tonation in their voices and expect you to guess the emotion. The characters hear something strange like, there's a planet that's been erased from our records, or I found a clone army that Qui-Gon ordered from Amazon, or I found a secret space communist meeting, and their responses on paper sound interested. However, the delivery always sounds like, "That's quite intriguing, Master Dr. Obi-Wan Kenobi III, PhD. How should we proceed about the matter?" And because there's this weird lack of interest from the main characters and a lack of personality in them as well, we just don't give a shit what's happening because we're bored out of our minds. Quick note here. Dooku's a lame-ass villain. No hate towards Christopher Lee, but the Count has literally no screen presence. He doesn't feel imposing at all. He never seems like he really has the upper hand. It doesn't help that he is up against two fantastic villains and also Darth Maul is there, but Count Dookie is kinda lame. Obi-Wan is probably the best character, and what's weird is he feels like he's not quite Obi-Wan yet. He feels like when you're a big fan of a sitcom and you go back to the beginning and they don't really know how to write him yet. This is first season Michael Scott version of Obi-Wan. He's weirdly hot-headed towards Anakin, but not enough where it seems unjustified. So it leaves this relationship with them looking like Anakin acting like a jackass who can't shut his trap while Obi-Wan tries to keep him chilled out. It feels like they just tried to turn Obi-Wan into Qui-Gon instead of just making him Obi-Wan. Anakin is probably one of the worst protagonists in cinematic history. He's absolutely insufferable, creepy, and just a goddamn dick. He whines about almost everything. He whines about being horny. He whines about being bored. He whines about sand, and he ironically whines about being baby. Broski, I wonder why.
I hate them.
The two-sided father-son thing with him and Obi-Wan doesn't work because Anakin's a piece of shit. I understand that they wanted to make his fall to the dark side believable, but you can do that without making him a complete asshole. Making a nice, well-meaning guy who has a bit of anger in him instead of a perverted, child-murdering monster.
And not just the men, but the women. And the children, too.
Wow, this movie really must have been incel heaven. A little advice to anyone trying to get with someone, how about you don't do a single thing Anakin does in this movie? The relationship between Padme and Anakin is really weird in this movie. Mostly because Anakin is a f***ing psychopath. And Padme is somehow hopelessly in love with him. He literally tells her he wants the Republic to turn to fascism to her, and she's just like,
"Don't kill me."
Don't
Oh my god, I'm literally blushing. Oh my gosh, you're so cute.
He's trying to kill you.
How about when he described how he massacred an entire village of Tusken Raiders, the women and the children too, and she still didn't end it there? Like, open your eyes, woman, smell the flowers. Anakin also just says creepy stuff, and I have no comments on it. I'll just let Master Skywalker speak for himself.
My goodness, you've grown.
So have you. Well, for a senator, I've thought about her every day since we've parted. She's forgotten me completely. She covered the cameras. I don't think she liked me watching her. Just being around her again is intoxicating.
Please don't look at me like that.
You're exactly the way I remember you in my dreams. Here everything is soft and smooth. Now that I'm with you again, I'm in agony. I can't breathe. You are in my very soul, tormenting me. If you're suffering as much as I am, please tell me.
It's all Obi-Wan's fault. He's jealous.
He's holding me back! I killed them all. They're dead. Every single one of them.
They're like animals. And I slaughtered them like animals.
You may be wondering why I haven't talked specifically about Padme. That's because her entire personality and plot relevance completely ties back to Anakin, so there's no point. She just follows him around and occasionally is hypocritical about their relationship. End of story. And you know what? Let's talk about the weird-ass Jedi Order. I think this is a good time to mention that the Jedi Order is clearly a very strange cult. This is cult behavior. The Jedi Order has separated more families than the U.S. Border Patrol, and that is saying something. I have never understood the rationale for Jedi being pseudo-orphaned. I feel like that creates a lot of weird little people who aren't well-adjusted since they never got to have parents or siblings or anything. I guess they all have their space grandpa, but it's not the same. Maybe all anyone needs is Yoda in their life. And the whole not being allowed to love thing, I also don't understand why that happens. Yes, I'm sure there's an answer on Wikipedia, but fuck Wikipedia. It didn't exist in 2002. I'm sorry, Wikipedia, I didn't mean that. But seriously, the explanations given just seem to be Yoda picking 3 random, somewhat negative emotions and showing how they each lead into each other, and then eventually to mass genocide. I don't know, I didn't watch the movie. Also, that prophecy, have you ever thought about how little sense this makes? Like, he will bring balance to the Force. Motherfucker, you are the problem. Listen, there's no balance to the Force because there's thousands of Jedi and 2 Sith Lords. Technically, when Order 66 kills Everett in the next movie, Anakin has brought balance since there's 2 Jedi and 2 Sith. And yeah, I know there were other Jedi, but come on, we were this close. I kind of want to talk about the story for a minute because I have a couple things to say. First off, seriously, no one knows about Kamino? Like, sure, it's not in the Jedi records, but there were 10,000 of these bastards flying around. How did no one find this random planet that wasn't on the map and think, maybe I should check this out? Especially since it's been at least 10 years since the clones were ordered by Qui-Gon, since he's been dead for at least that long. Also, how did they not know where the battle droids were being made? Like, these dumb fucks have been running around for at least 10 years as well. How did no one ever find this factory? The movie is so much harder to talk about because honestly, at the end of the day, it's just hot garbage in a unique way. And unlike a lot of movies like this, it doesn't press my ironic enjoyment buttons for about 99% of the runtime. Hopefully one day it does, but for now, it's a dog turd marinated in piss, shaken not stirred. Well, now that that's done, we get to take a little break from these terrible prequel movies. Yay!
She's not much for first impressions, unlike this guy.
Clone Wars is a special disaster in the fact that it clearly wasn't intended to be a feature film, and the fact that someone thought it was good enough to be one doesn't surprise me that much. George doesn't have a great track record for his decision making. This is going to be a shorter segment because the problems basically boil down to this. This movie was clearly meant to be multiple episodes of the show. Because of this, a lot of the things in this film are a little odd. The character development for all of the characters is very, very strange. Like, the movie starts and Anakin is a bit pissed about having Ahsoka around. This makes it seem like the whole movie will be about Anakin learning his purposes to teach the new generation of Jedi. But no, he's perfectly fine with Ahsoka like 20 minutes in. Okay, but maybe Ahsoka is supposed to learn to be patient. I mean, sometimes the movie's about that. You know, when the original episode was about it. This weird disconnect between parts of the movie also means that lines of dialogue or character moments completely go back on or don't make sense with things that have already happened. Almost immediately, Ahsoka and Anakin talk to each other like they've known each other for years. There are moments where they say things about each other that just aren't true, or at least not within the confines of this movie. Ahsoka says a bunch of stuff about Anakin not being patient, which completely backtracks on the first 20 minutes of the movie. The weirdest part about watching this as a fan of the show is you can feel where the episodes would have usually ended. There are a bunch of moments where it feels like I should hear but then I don't hear and it makes me a little mad. I don't think I need to spend that much time discussing how bad this film looks. Like, god damn, it looks like shit. Ignoring how textureless these character models are, or how the backgrounds just look like pictures and not that nice of ones, or how there are borderline unrendered moments, The characters hardly move, and when they do, it just looks completely wrong. Anyways, this movie is kinda ass. Time to forget it exists.
And nobody is as excited for the big celebration as I am. Not scientifically possible!
It's a cold, rainy night in May of 2005, and a young, impressionable 62-year-old Martin Scorsese walks out of a lonely AMC theater after watching Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. He stood there a while, mulling over the film he had just watched in an empty theater and deciding whether he had enjoyed it or appreciated it. And after deep consideration over the piece he had just witnessed, he probably decided he hated it. But Roger Ebert liked it, apparently. This movie looks 1,000 times better than Attack, and not just because of the technological improvements. The film has way more atmosphere to it and lots more pleasing, or at least cohesive, aesthetics. The cinematography felt much more grand and exciting than the other two, and I don't know why it took this long. Wait, hang on a minute. Is this really the first PG-13 Star Wars movie? This one may have been my single favorite score in the whole series, and has my favorite track in any Star Wars movie ever that I may or may not be able to play for you based on copyright restrictions. Listen to how awesome this is. I feel like this is the only in the trilogy to really be a Star Wars movie. What I mean is that the original trilogy was snippets of a bigger war story, specifically some of the more important moments in the war. But like, there isn't a war going on in the first two prequel movies, so it's just like Star and Peace, or Star random bullshit, or Star shut the fuck up and remember your childhood. Revenge of the Sith is so blatantly about war that the first word of the opening crawl is literally just war with an exclamation point. Quick note, there are heroes on both sides and also evil is everywhere. Okay, pick one. I also feel like I should mention something that I really like about the prequels is they try a lot of new things. Now, some of those said new things f***ing suck, and that's okay, but the willingness to try new things is nice. The prequels broke new territory in the kinds of stories Star Wars can tell, and I respect that. Honestly, a Star Wars neo-noir should have been a badass concept if it wasn't headed up by a dumbass director. No mercy for George. I have a lot of respect for some of the talent that worked on this film and gave us such amazing creatures and ships and planets that are honestly really neat and bring a lot to make this universe feel big. Now to actually get into the movie. Anakin is so much better in this. He's a bit snippy, but is well-meaning, which is much more likable personality than whiny asshole. He clearly genuinely loves Padme, and you can empathize with him in his situation much more because of it. He has a much better dynamic with Padme and Obi-Wan than he has ever had, and especially the old friend/brothers dynamic works so much better than surrogate father. His ultimate turn feels a lot more like borderline hypnosis than I remembered. It really feels like he was taken over by the dark side, which makes it that much more tragic. Obi-Wan is a gem. They finally just let the character breathe, and he's just wonderful. He's a chipper boy who brings some wonderful one-liners, and every scene with him is a joy.
Hello there.
It is so much easier to latch onto this character, and McGregor's performance in the final act was honestly powerful. Grievous is such a fun contagonist. Yes, that was an SAT word. He is such a weird, twisted character, both visually and personality-wise. He is the most supervillain-esque villain in the main Star Wars canon, and it makes him stand out. He has a goofy-ass voice, and the laughing cough is funny as shit. He has so much presence despite his short amount of screen time, and after 2 duds on the villainy scale, finally get a villain that I think is worthy of the Star Wars pantheon. And of course, we have to talk about cheese.
It's the motherfucking Eagle Double G. Snoop Dogg.
Ian McDiarmid is such a f***ing legend. He gives such a lightning performance that it just makes even scenes that would be normally boring so much fun. The scene where Palpatine reveals he's a Sith to Anakin is one of my favorites in the saga, and it has a lot to do with how powerful Palpatine feels in it. Anakin is holding a lightsaber to him, but it really feels like Sheevy Boy has all the power in the world and is just waiting to beat his ass at any moment. The script just straight up wouldn't work for any other delivery. I genuinely believe this man can topple a government. He is one crafty piece of shit. I was like, this might be a weird statement, but the Kermit the Frog thing made sense this time around. This is a Muppet of a man. I think it is the right time in the video for the lightsaber rant. Lightsabers bore me to tears at this point. There are too many damn lightsabers in Star Wars. I understand these movies are all about nostalgia baiting, and nothing is more nostalgic than a good old tussle with a laser sword, but damn, we gotta stop. I'm sorry to pull the original trilogy card, but the reason to me why the fights work in the originals is they only pulled out lightsaber fights for the important moments. Ben's death is an important moment that changes the trajectory of the series. Luke and Vader's fight at the end of Empire is a big moment that changes the trajectory of the series. Luke, Vader, and Palpy Boys fight at the end of Return of the Jedi is, in my opinion, the biggest and most trajectory-changing point in the series. But then here in the prequels, they love to pull out the swords for literally anything. A spooky gas fills the room. Laser sword time. Millipedes? Laser sword time. Idiot with a jetpack? F***ing laser sword time. Which is why it makes me happy that they kind of back off from the lightsabers a bit in this one. I love how much fun this fight is. There are little actual lightsabers, and it makes for more exciting fighting as we get to see them beat the shit out of each other on a lizard and a wheel thingy that ends in one of the few uses of a blaster by a Jedi ever.
So uncivilized.
These are the cool references. This movie felt like they actually had dope shit to show us, and it actually made me kinda giddy. The Wookiee planet and everything to do with it is cool as hell, and I won't hear anything else. When Chewie and his buddy send off Yoda in the escape pod, I felt that. There's no reason for this to be that wholesome. And the Anakin Obi-Wan battle? Epic. I can absolutely endorse a battle that is simultaneously cool and funny as shit at the same time. Every time Ewan McGregor says a word, you go,
this shit is beautiful. It was a beautiful moment.
And then the camera turns around to Anakin and you are straight up watching the birth of internet humor. And that to me is probably why I love it this much. This movie's meme city and I couldn't be happier. Almost every other line has some kind of cult following because the script's f***ing stupid and it's wonderful. It must suck to watch this with me because I quote almost every line. And now every time I watch, I discover a new moment that cracks me up.
Time to abandon ship.
He gives you focus. Is he not to destroy the Sith and bring balance to the Force?
So the prophecy says.
To create light.
Revenge of the Sith is wonderful and a true piece of timeless cinema. So really quickly, I thought we'd take a short break from the yelling to talk about something I mentioned earlier, and it's about Roger Ebert, everyone's favorite sweaty armchair snob, wrote a 3.5 out of 4-star review for this movie. This means that this Rich Evans wannabe thinks that this movie, to a certain extent, is unironically on the same level as Aliens, Little Shop of Horrors, The Royal Tenenbaums, The Return of the King, and Fantastic fucking Mr. Fox, and also Cars 2. I don't know how that makes sense. This review has been argued for years about whether it is honest or whether it was paid for, so I read it and recorded the reaction, and...
Dude, that's like the greatest thing I've ever seen. Dark Side Shadows Sith. That's the picture you chose? After episode 2 got so bogged down in politics that it played like a Republic covered by C-SPAN. That's funny. Episode 3 is a return to the classic space opera style that launched the series. Not really? I don't think he watched the movie. It doesn't lead up to where the original Star Wars began. It leads up to 19 years before it began. How a pleasant and brave young man was transformed into a... Okay, hang on, you actually didn't watch the movie because he was not pleasant or brave. In the spirit of all the Star Wars movies, this rescue sequence flies in the face of logic, since the two pilots are able to board Grievous's command ship and proceed without much trouble, where the chance of being held. Where are the guards and security systems? Why for that matter does deep space user need not space tower when every porthole opens onto the universe? But never mind! Dude, you gave this a 3.5 star. You just poked a giant hole in this movie's logic and you're like, never mind, who cares? Buddy is kinda tearing this movie to shreds. Not distinguishable for its dialogue. Dude, has a certain poignancy. Why is he using these words? Why is he using all these words I can't say? To say that George Lucas cannot write a love scene is an understatement. Greeting cards could have expressed more and you gave it a 3.5? You're actually tearing this movie out. How can you stand in front of exploding star fleets and sound as if you're talking on a phone at Starbucks? Buddy, how did you give this a 3.5? You clearly hate this movie. Sometimes the emphasis on sentences is misplaced. During the elevator adventure, in the opening scene we hear, "Did I miss something?" when it should be, "Did I miss something?" Wait, hang on, is there supposed to be a bolded word here? You just said the same sentence twice. Although Lucas has his characters attend to a futuristic opera that looks like a cross between Cirque du Soleil and an ultrasound scan of an unborn baby, you regard the opera hall simply as a place that's not as engaging as the saloon. You're actually trashing this movie. This is hardcore. He's actually obliterating this movie right now. A word, however, about the duels fought with lightsaber, but the thrill is gone. Correct. See, he's right. He hates this movie. He hates this movie. And the lightsaber battles in episode 3 are more like isometrics. Jeez. These are all, however, more... oh, okay, he's about to deflect everything. Guys, he doesn't hate this movie. If he got bogged down in some solemnity and theory in episode 2, the Force is a jollier mood this time. Revenge of the Sith is great entertainment. Do you hate this movie? You hate this movie.
Argue all you want. I think he was paid off. Thank you. Moving on.
Looks like a baby to me. Yeah. Evil.
This movie is really strange. Aiden... Ehrenreich is not a bad actor. In fact, he is a pretty good one. He was good in Oppenheimer, and apparently he existed during Cocaine Bear, which I don't remember, but fine, I trust Google. But unfortunately, he was given an irreplaceable role and basically nothing interesting to do in this movie. Han's literal only thing he's fighting for is his girlfriend, but we get so little groundwork on their relationship that he's basically just trying to get laid this entire movie and then gets cock-blocked anyway.
Emotional damage!
Han really just feels like he's chasing tail the whole movie and just kind of riding along. I really cannot think of a single important decision Han makes past the 10 to 15 minute mark, and he's the literal main character. It doesn't help that the role of Han Solo is so inextricably linked to Harrison Ford and his improv that it really can't work with anyone else. I'm still glad they recast though, because Lucasfilm could have done this shit. Then we have Woody Harrelson, whose character really doesn't make any sense to me. He makes a full 180 after Val dies so abruptly that it just doesn't make sense. You would think that said partner's death would affect him in some ways, but he never mentions her again after she dies. He goes full on evil mastermind just for the hell of it, except we don't know it until the end. Which sounds fun, but up until the reveal, his character is so dry and one-noted. Kira is so much more interesting than Han, or at least she could have been. I feel like if this movie had dedicated more time to Kira's struggle between her commitment to Crimson Dawn and her love for Han, there would feel like there is a lot more at stake. She had so much potential that it just pisses me off. Chewbacca is the best character in the franchise, and the character that actually should have had a movie. He has the most interesting motivation out of anyone else, and it would translate so well into a movie. Chewbacca's looking for his family/tribe, who he was separated from during the Battle of Kashyyyk, and along the way, he meets Han and finds a new family. To me, that's so much more interesting of a concept for a film, since you can tackle themes of grief and loss and how war affects people. This one shot here is the single best and most genuine moment in the entire movie, and I feel like Chewbacca would be this good the entire time. Childish Gambino is a f***ing good Lando, and it pisses me off that this movie wasn't about him either. The two best scenes in the movie are the two Sabacc scenes, and I would love a movie of Lando getting caught up in scamming people. I love that Billy Dee Williams mispronounced Han so much that it just became a part of the character.
Anything, Han?
Lando's so suave and clever, and honestly so real. He made all the right decisions the entire time. The movie immediately gets better the moment Lando's on screen. I don't hate L3 like a lot of people do. I just really don't like that they made a joke out of a really seriously fucked up thing about the Star Wars universe. So I guess it's time to get into the fact that the droids are fucking slaves. It's a really weird truth that has existed since the start of Star Wars, that droids and robots are enslaved people and are discriminated against. But the original trilogy is so captivating that it's easy to ignore it or just to not notice. Since we live in the modern day when most Star Wars content is pretty now it's hard not to notice things like this. And I really wish we could get a Star Wars movie that goes into this and maybe could have to do with a robot rebellion for equal rights. But this movie definitely is not that. L3 could have and should have been a very interesting character, but instead of taking this pretty dark subject matter seriously, the movie decides to make L3, and by proxy the concept of droids being slaves, into a massive f***ing joke, and I don't like it. Instead of being a badass rebellious lesbian queen, she's the stereotypical TERF, and it's bad. I think something this movie also doesn't seem to do well is use the crime thriller angle. Listen, I've watched a fuck ton of crime thrillers, and I mean a fuck ton. And something I can say about pretty much all of them is that they like to put you on the edge of your seat. A good crime thriller should make you crazy with anticipation about whether a plan will work out or not. And they do that by setting up clear stakes. Baby Driver sets up stakes by showing the people Baby is working with, especially those who turn on him, are extremely dangerous and will kill him if necessary. Nightmare Alley sets up stakes by showing that the old man is absolutely off his rocker and will make Bradley Cooper's life a living hell. Rope sets up stakes with how much evidence of the crime exists in close proximity to the people that could turn in the criminals. Solo doesn't really set up stakes. We know that they need to make Paul Bettany happy, but we really don't know what will happen if they don't.
Big man.
I also want to quickly mention the way this movie looks. The first 15 minutes honestly looks really good and fit the concept of Crime Planet. The problem is that these two aesthetics, extreme shadow with yellow lights and pale white daytime, are the only two palettes this movie ever uses, And by the 45-minute mark, it gets kind of boring. I'm tired of all this yellow. Give me another damn color. I also think this movie has a little case of dumb shit syndrome. What the fuck even is this?
What's your name, son?
Hunt.
What? Who are your people?
I'm alone.
Solo.
We were all chill with it being his name. There's also the Darth Maul cameo, which is on its own dumb and useless, and also he pulls out a lightsaber for literally no reason. We were this close to one movie without a lightsaber. We were this close. Regardless, Solo is a pretty whatever movie that I might watch again one day, but most likely not.
That's rough, buddy.
To be honest, I hadn't started really getting into movies until about 1.5 years ago. If you had asked me what I thought about Rogue One back then, I would have told you that it was kind of shit because the characters had no personality and that most of the movie is boring except for the end. That was before I was appreciating films as films and was instead just looking at the script. But since then, I've personally realized that films are a lot more than that. I can love a film with a mediocre script just for having exceptional visuals and music and sound. I don't care about the writing as much when there's genuine passion and art behind the craftsmanship. Genuine passion and art behind the craftsmanship. How am I struggling with this? I don't care as much about the writing when there's a genuine passion and art behind the craftsmanship at work. Rogue One is a movie with a mediocre script, and honestly, it is probably the biggest thing that drags the movie down. The character writing specifically isn't the best. At the end of the film, the only characters you feel like you know well are K2SO and Krennic, and I feel like that has a lot more to do with the performances anyway. And with how quickly and efficiently this plot moves through the 2 hours and 13 minutes of runtime, I really feel like it wasn't as much a fault of just bad character writing and more so bad film planning. There's a lot of story here, as well as at least 7 characters we are really supposed to care for by the end, and I think this would have worked better as either a much longer film or as a limited series onto streaming. If this movie could have been fleshed out, kind of like Hateful Eight, I think it would have genuinely done a lot of good and given us more time with these characters. Another thing I wouldn't agree with my younger self on is that this movie has uninteresting characters. It has a bunch of interesting characters that we just don't get the time to meet and understand their dynamics, which is the most fun part of ensemble casts. I think an extended version could help us better understand why these characters bonded so quickly, since they have almost no time to just interact the way the film is now. It would have been interesting to see how Jin begins to open up and trust the others. It would have been interesting to see how Andor slowly becomes more independent and begins defying orders he thinks are wrong. It would have been interesting to flesh out the blind guy and the machine gun guy and their gay romance. It would have been interesting to see how the pilot deals with the fear and paranoia he has from deserting the Empire. And K2SO and Krennic already f***ing perfect. Y'all already know how much I love this clip. This close. All these things would have been great, except a normal length Star Wars movie doesn't have time for that. This isn't the only way the writing doesn't work great. There's some weird lines and the usual plot holes and plot armor, but then there are a couple of gems like these.
Although there's a problem on the horizon. There's no horizon.
Be careful not to choke on your aspirations, director.
But I cannot see. I'm legally blind.
But why do I like this film when I don't like the script? That would be because Rogue One is a gorgeous movie, both in its visuals and in its sound. There are scenes that, despite the clunky dialogue's best attempts, are so powerful both through how it is shot and through the music that it is just staggering. Production design looks so good, it's stupid. The movie is so much more interestingly lit than most of the Star Wars canon. The music fucks so damn hard. And I loved how exhilarating the fight scenes were, especially those taking place in the air. And of course, I can't ignore how fantastic the final act was. The ending is one of the most amazing things that's ever come out of Star Wars ever. It works so well in the fact that you really don't need to know the characters at all. You see, because we know these are rebels and we know that they are fighting for the original trilogy to be possible, we immediately associate these characters with these guys. So subconsciously, we feel like we're watching Luke and Leia and Han and Chewie fighting, and despite the fact that I very highly doubt it was intended, that's brilliant. Now, even though we didn't get enough time with these characters to really feel for them, this ending is still a fucking gut punch. They're the rebels. It's our boys, man. It's our boys. And this makes the script end up way more aggravating, because if we had had time to really care for these characters and appreciate their connections and relationship, this would have been a rocket launcher to the balls. Even if you don't have balls, you'd still feel it in your testicles. Before we finish this segment, I want to get into one last thing that I feel I must address. Holy shit, Darth Vader kicks so much ass. This movie started a trend with this character that I am personally all in favor of. You see, classic Darth Vader is a big, powerful badass, and that's great, and I love it, but Rogue One started what modern Star Wars has been doing with Darth Vader ever since. It's been making Darth Vader a demon of my nightmares. This man is so mercilessly evil, he kills like 20 dudes in the hallway without even trying to negotiate. He just slaughters them. I love that this set a precedent to make Darth Vader into a literal horror movie villain so much that I made a Darth Vader horror trailer earlier this year. Anyways, despite certain things about its writing holding it back, I like Rogue One quite a bit.
I hate Brenda, and a bad guy hit me in the shin, and I peed all in my pants.
I love the original Star Wars. Before I really get into this, we have to address the music. Do you know how happy this main theme makes me? How fucking perfect this piece of music is? This theme will forever get you in the mood for a space adventure. And honestly, so does this entire score. Obviously, it is still the first score of the series, so the impact of some of the themes isn't at a peak yet. But man, this slaps harder than Will Smith. And also, apparently, this is the in-universe style of music Cantina Band is, so do what you will with that information. It is honestly impressive how airtight this script is. Every hole I keep feeling like I found in the logic just plugs itself up again. Like, I thought it was kind of weird that there was a scene where Obi-Wan cuts off a guy's arm in the pub. I thought it was a dumb use of the lightsaber that felt very prequel-esque. But then I realized this was so the audience could see how the thing worked, since a 1977 audience wouldn't know what a lightsaber was. Another was the Empire. Sure, Mr. Helmet Man is dicking up things for the rebels, but Luke doesn't really seem that affected by it, and not really the people of the planet, since the troopers are really only there to find the droids.
These aren't the droids you're
Shut up,
looking
I'm
for.
talking. So I ask you,
what in the f*** are we doing here? Hell, I don't...
Oh yeah, I guess we should talk about this. The Empire is so overtly evil that it's refreshing. You heard me, refreshing. The prequels have the Trade Federation, an evil force that I guess minorly inconvenience the people of Naboo and Phantom Menace, but we really never get to see what they actually do that harms the people of the planet. And to be honest, the only reason we could possibly dislike the Separatists is if we really like the quote-unquote good guys. But the Empire makes it really clear right from the first film. Oh yeah, we're here to fuck people up. Even after decades, the scene where the Empire blows up Alderaan is still one of the most shocking scenes in cinematic history, and it immediately makes us root for the rebellion. Luke Skywalker is such a bitch in this movie, and I kinda love that. I know I'm a bad hypocrite because Anakin is also a whiny little shit, except no, I'm not. Luke Skywalker doesn't murder a village of sand people, including the women and the children too. Knowing how he turns out, you get to see how much he changes from the impatient and kinda pathetic kid on Tatooine to a fucking badass. But I'm getting ahead of myself. C-3PO and R2-D2 are such charming characters. Sure, 3PO is kind of a pathetic wimp, but he is an endearing one, since watching his suffering is very entertaining. And R2 is honestly an impressive feat, since he's such an expressive character for having no way to emote other than beeps and clicks and using the limited range of motion he has. It's easy to forget how much fun these characters are when they get sidelined for most of the series. Obi-Wan is a wonderful character as well. He's a nice foil to Luke's incessant blithering. I'm sorry, I just wanted to say those words. Guys, you know what time it is. It's time to talk about Han Solo is probably the coolest character in cinematic history. Han Solo is the dictionary definition of a likable dick, and makes him so much fun, and I feel like he really grounds his story. Luke really isn't the common man. He's a Jedi in training, and he's the chosen one. Han Solo is just a normal guy. A bit cocky, a bit greedy, but he's just some guy that happened to have a ship. He isn't interested in any of this rebellion stuff, and he's just trying to get his way through the galaxy with his broski. And this makes his turn from scumbag with occasional nice tendencies to a true hero so enjoyable. As I said, Chewie is the single best Star Wars character. Come on, dude, I'll kick your ass down there in the comments. And of course, we have to talk about the second best Star Wars character, the Gonk Droid. Give it up for the Gonk Droid, mother. It's Darth Vader. This man is the pinnacle of badass. Almost every scene with him is so full of dread, it's fantastic. Darth Vader has such a cool design. The boardroom scene is one of the best scenes in the entire saga. I honestly really like some of the dialogue, and it's probably more because it's iconic than its quality. And you want to know something that Darth Vader does that classic villains from the prequels, such as Darth Maul, Count Dooku, General Grievous, Newt Gunray, and George Lucas. They don't fuck people up. Sure, Maul killed Quadragon Jinn, and George Lucas killed a franchise.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme, every stanza kind of rhymes with the last one. Hopefully it'll work.
But none of the characters just slaughter without remorse like Darth Vader does. Vader's so evil in every way, and it's great. This movie's cinematography and production design can really only be described as charming. Like, don't get me wrong, I love the way it looks, but it's not quite as grand as the rest of the series. It's much more quaint than its follow-ups, but there are so many iconic designs thanks to the great Ralph McQuarrie, who really should have gotten the credit for this series because of how much he influenced it. Before I finish discussing the film, I have to discuss the special edition changes. Holy shit, how do you screw up this bad? The original Star Wars doesn't have the biggest special edition event of the trilogy, but I think it's dragged down the worst overall. Why George Lucas thought it was a good idea to just randomly add gross alien computer blobs into the background of so many scenes is beyond me. Literally, what the hell is this transition here? This monstrosity somehow looks worse than Jurassic Park's Brontosaurus, which appeared a decade earlier. There's the weird re-edit of the scene where Han was supposed to shoot where his neck just like snaps itself. Why did you change that? There's plenty of weird little things to pick at, but I want to discuss quickly what I think is the actual dumbest insert from the special edition edits. This scene is so useless that it's ridiculous. In theory, it makes sense. You have to make sure there are clear stakes for Han Solo, except no, that's dumb. We literally just had that scene. You'd already laid down the stakes for Han, so why is Jabba here? Is this supposed to have tension? Because there isn't any. They're chatting like they're just two bros. And these stakes aren't paid off in any way during the film. Sure, they are in Empire and Return of the Jedi, but Empire builds up the conflict plenty during its own runtime. And now we don't get to experience Jabba's first impression in its most impactful way, in his own territory. I think the thing that makes the special edition changes so infuriating to me isn't just their existence. I'm fine with filmmakers tinkering and making changes they see adding to the story. What I'm not fine with is not giving audiences the ability to choose what version of film they're going to watch, not be forced to deal with the changes made post-release. There are hundreds, if not thousands of films that have an extended cut, a director's cut, etc., but I don't like it when the original or theatrical cut is basically impossible to find because that isn't fair to the audiences. Blade Runner has a bunch of cuts, but you can buy all of the officially released ones. All 3 Lord of the Rings have staggeringly long extended editions that you can choose between watching it or the theatrical version. I wouldn't care as much if the option were there, but it's not. And all of that aside, Star Wars is great. Honestly, this review probably could have been that simple.
Yo, dudes, the Empire's pretty chill. Maybe you could, join it or...
For my 10th birthday, my grandpa took me into the city to see this with a live symphony orchestra playing the music. It was and still is my favorite theater experience, and is probably one of the biggest reasons this is forever and always my favorite Star Wars movie. But I have lots to say, so we aren't ending here. The original Star Wars was confident in the way of a bunch of spunky kids who had passion for a movie. This one feels like the confidence of some stone-cold creators of cinema. So much about the visual look and feel of this movie is a massive step up from the first. The movie uses its few settings to their fullest by making them as vibrant and vivacious as possible. Hoth takes a full advantage of the cool grays and blues. Echo Base has so many pipes spraying steam, and every scene is full of people to show the claustrophobic yet united feeling of the rebellion's stay on this ice cube. Dagobah is full of deep, misty browns and greens, and there's so much life in every scene between the fantastic creature effects and the tapestry of wonderful sounds that make this world feel wild and very alive. Cloud City is illuminated with pink and orange dangers that await for our heroes beneath the facade. So many shots use the varying colors to their advantage to create some dazzling images on a huge silver screen. Sound that I can... I also want to quickly mention that this one has the best changes made during the re-releases. This one has the absolute tightest script in the entire franchise. Not a single shot is wasted. Many lines and scenes have multiple meanings, and it's so dense. Every image has so much going on. The atmosphere is immaculate. There's such a clear distinction between the nuts and bolts real-world story of Han and Leia and friends against the mystical journey Luke takes in this film. Empire has some of the funniest lines and most exciting moments in Star Wars, as well as some of the quietest and most depressing moments, and the script juggles it all perfectly through an exciting, action-packed first act, a fun, intense, while also calm and peaceful second act, and a bombastic, no-nonsense third act that drives home the ending. This movie does such a fantastic job with its characters. It's truly a challenge to keep characters not only consistent, but also have a cohesive story arc through multiple films, especially when the reins are being passed from director to director. But this film makes these characters into icons. Luke feels like he's at that perfect mark of a protagonist. Where its predecessor may have had a Luke who turned people off for his whining,
I was going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
and its successor had a Luke who may have turned off people for his overly stoic nature, Empire hits the f***ing sweet spot. Luke is engaging. He's smart and serious enough to invest us in the dramatic moments, but still impatient in a way that keeps the story moving. We can connect to his story because he reacts to the situation in the way the audience wants him to react to. When he is captured by the Wampa, he doesn't scream and yell and attract attention. Instead, he collects himself and attempts to grab his lightsaber using the Force. Luke tries to save his friends despite his teacher's warnings because he values them over his destiny. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford's dynamite chemistry. Very few films can make characters with such good rapport, but this one does it effortlessly between a fine script and two fantastic performances. So many scenes are elevated to icon level by how well these characters interact. Empire is the most believable and passionate love story in the entire Star Wars franchise, and it only has one kiss between the two characters. And two between these, but that's a topic for the next segment. Pick a line from one of Han and Leia's scenes together, and it probably has a cult following. And of course, they have my actual favorite theme in all of Star Wars. I was lying the first time. Yoda's such a great character. His introduction as the Star Wars equivalent of a hillbilly is still one of the most fun twists in the series. The scenes where he's being a little bitch are so funny every time. I love his monologues. They have an old man weirdness to them that make him become more endearing through them.
We went to a restaurant, not that I don't like salad, but that's all they had was salad.
Lando Calrissian is a smooth motherfucker, and he really doesn't get much smoother than in this one. Every single rewatch, his first lines get me worried, and that doesn't change for the rest of the movie. Boba Fett is really cool in this movie, and this has a really neat introduction of the Emperor. The ending is, in my opinion, one of the great last-minute changes in studio history. There are a lot of stories about how different parts of iconic films could have been worse. Eric Stoltz almost played Marty McFly. Jeffrey Dickface Katzenberg almost cut part of your world. Imagine being the MGM exec who tried to cut over the rainbow. But then again, that entire production was a shit show. Irvin Kershner and George Lucas decided to quickly reshoot the final scene of Empire when it was already in theaters to be able to include this iconic scene to wrap up the story. And this is where I know for a fact that at one point George Lucas truly understood what he was making. The final scene is a perfect encapsulation of Star Wars and its core message, and why it means so much to us. Here we have our heroes, who over the course of the last 2 hours have gone through intense mental and physical training, fought for survival and in organized combat, been betrayed, lost friends, lovers, limbs, and for our main character, discovered a dark evil lineage. All of this makes for a dark conclusion to any story, much less a Star Wars one, and the original version of the film ends right after Luke is brought onto the Millennium Falcon. But that isn't what Star Wars is or has ever been about. Star Wars is about hope in desperate times. It's about grabbing onto that shred of victory against seemingly endless and insurmountable opposition. So that's why Lucas and Kershner changed the ending, because this final scene is Star Wars thesis in pure form. These characters have been beaten down, been utterly defeated both mentally and physically, and emotionally, but they stand overlooking their friends in the galaxy they hold so dear, letting the stars give their souls hope for a future where their sacrifice was worth it. Empire is my favorite Star Wars movie, and probably the best we're ever gonna have.
Up yours, woke moralists. We'll see who cancels who.
I want to preface this segment by saying that I love this movie. I'm gonna shit talk it a bunch because there's a lot of dumb shit in it, but I love it. I have so many memories attached to it, like seeing it in theaters last year when it was re-released, an experience that gave me a perspective on the film I didn't have, so let's start there. Return of the Jedi is visually wonderful, other than the obvious. The creatures and puppets and costumes are so interesting, and especially in the Java scenes, there's so much detail in the backgrounds. So many characters and effects that could go completely unnoticed in most viewings. Must have taken hours and hours of work. The lighting is pretty exciting in many places, and I love the set design and the atmosphere it creates. This door is stupidly gigantic, but I don't care because it's a dope-ass door. The sound design is fantastic, especially on the creatures, and the music is top tier, as always. A fun concept to think about is the fact that David Lynch was asked to direct this movie.
I was asked by George to
I would love to know what would have happened, but regardless, we have one of the funniest interviews on YouTube.
We went to a restaurant. Not that I don't like salad, but that's all they had was salad.
Never change, Dave. Never change. I think something worth addressing here at the beginning is the Han Solo argument. There's a version of Empire Strikes Back where Han Solo is going to die in the carbonite freezing process. And one of the biggest discourses surrounding this movie is whether or not Han Solo should have died. And I'm torn. On one hand, Han Solo doesn't do shit in this movie, and it would only make the ending of Empire that much more impactful, but on the other hand, it gives us one of my favorite sequences in Star Wars. Regardless of its necessity, the first act of this film is great. It's such a change of pace from the rest of the series thus far, with viewers remaining almost entirely in the dark for the first 15 to 20 minutes. And it has two really fun action set pieces with two fantastic creature effects. I love how fucking gross this entire sequence is and how violating it is for the characters. It does have the biggest offense to my eyes and ears that George Lucas has ever produced. God damn it, George. I think the worst part of this movie is the middle third. The visuals definitely take a dive in the middle chunk. The atmosphere, lighting, and production design of the first act are basically gone. To be fair, they just in the woods. But at the same time, so is Robert Eggers, and he made The Witch. It also has some pretty unnecessary but iconic scenes on Dagobah. It has some silly effects, and it has the Ewoks. Listen, the Ewoks are annoying as shit, but if nothing else, they are proof that the minions were inevitable. Yeah, I got sick of these weird-looking teddy bears that make obnoxious noises and act like pricks. They should have just been a death cult. And of course, this middle chunk is where you find out the truth about Luke and Leia. What the fuck? George, did you watch your earlier movies? You retroactively made the other two movies have incestuous moments. And guess what? They knew they were gonna do this. Yoda already mentioned there is another in the last movie, you know, the one where Luke and Leia kiss twice. The scene between them is nice, but damn it, this is weird as hell in context with the rest of the trilogy, especially with the knowledge they wrote this, knowing they were gonna write this.
My sister has it.
The final act is what makes this movie work, though. The final act of this movie has impacted series finales of other franchises more than anything else in this trilogy because the blueprint has been used for movie after movie, including many other Star Wars movies. You have a couple interlinked plot lines that all need to be accomplished in time to win the day. The change in this formula mainly stems from the amount of plot lines. You have to destroy the Death Star from inside, but not until the shield generator is down on Endor, and on top of that, Luke is on the Death Star and has basically until the shield generator is down to defeat the Emperor and get off the ship. And on top of that, the Death Star is actually fully operational and ready to fuck shit up. This makes for one of the most tense final acts in a movie, since all the plot lines seem to slowly devolve into disaster before the tides are turned, and the drama between Luke and Vader is also really good. A line that stayed with me on this watch was this:
"It is too late for me, son."
Vader speaks pretty frequently in inclusive terms. He talks about you and I, we, us, but here he specifically only mentions me, a choice that feels very intentional. I think this makes it clear that Vader isn't confident in the Emperor's plan, since if he was, he would say it was too late for the both of them. But also the thought that Darth Vader may have had a plan and was saying it was too late for him since he had foreseen his own death. Regardless, there is a potency to these scenes, and so much of it gets me in the feels every time. I love everything about the Emperor in this. He's such a joy with his gleeful evil. I liked how much more stake in the story C-3PO had to other installments. I liked the part where the Ewok died. That was funny as shit. I also liked when Admiral Akbar said the thing. It's a trap! Despite its flaws, I really like Return of the Jedi. Yeah, I don't actually hate him, because he generally doesn't seem to be a shitty dude. Despite the crazy creative control and not being questioned much, if at all, when making the prequels, I feel like that wasn't him being aggressive as much as the fact that people on his team were all seeing him as the George Lucas. He really has only done one thing that truly pisses me off, which we have covered thoroughly, and that isn't really enough for me to blame him. So why did I just spend the last hour taking jabs at George? To be honest, it's cathartic. George Lucas has made so many baffling and frustrating decisions, most especially in that late 90s, 2000s era, that it feels nice that despite said decisions not being the only factor in why he made a bunch of shitty choices, there's someone to point to as the problem. But I feel like to just discount George as an idiot who ruined Star Wars, which I've spent a lot of time doing, but shut up, this is my video, completely ignores two important things. 1, George Lucas didn't f***ing ruin Star Wars. It takes a lot to retroactively ruin a great thing, and I honestly can't think of a time a movie has been able to do that. And 2, George has an undeniable impact on cinema, for better or for worse. Despite how I feel about McQuarrie's influence, George Lucas changed the game in terms of cinema. Star Wars is one of the biggest influence to where our modern cinematic landscape looks. Star Wars is a crowd-pleasing, accessible space adventure that is heavy in action and special effects with lots of merchandising opportunities. And if you look at movies coming to your local AMC, that sentence might be applicable to a bunch of them. And yeah, there's something to be said about how Star Wars kind of started killing movies that were coming out in the earlier 70s and 60s. Movies like Taxi Driver or Bullet or Dirty Harry or The Godfather, movies that cleaned up when they were initially released, wouldn't do nearly as well today because of their inaccessibility and the more intense scenes and complex structures they adopt. And in this way, Star Wars may very well have been the death of cinema as the auteurs of the late 60s/early 70s knew it. There's no way Lucas could have known this would happen, and you really can't put blame in the hands of people like him or Spielberg or Zemeckis for what happened, because at the end of the day, Hollywood follows the consumer and what the general public responds well to. So any death of cinema that may have happened at any point in time is entirely and utterly blood on our hands. So with that said, it's time to talk about the 3 most controversial films of the 2010s.
I didn't kill Han Solo. Wokeness killed Han Solo.
The Force Awakens is an extremely mixed bag movie that I think I like. On the technical side, I love a lot about what it's doing visually. The desolate and expansive production design on Jakku looks great. Maz Kanata's little hideaway place is neat. Starkiller Base, and specifically the battle in the snow, looks cool. This is the first movie that has realistic physics on the light coming from the lightsabers, and it looks so fucking awesome. There's a lot to love about much of the imagery and the music. Holy shit, John, you're too good for these movies. But then there's the thing that holds us back. The blockbuster elements that have crept into this movie. This movie will have a shot with so much depth and color and drama, and follow it up with the flattest fucking Hallmark-ass shot you can think of, and it's unbelievably frustrating. And of course, there's the editing. I really haven't been watching blockbuster filmmaking the way I was just a year or 2 ago, and in that time I've been trying to watch well-made, interesting movies. And in that time, I've seen a lot of great editing. Coming back to this one, it made me realize how much I really don't like blockbuster editing. Even watching Rogue One and Solo, I didn't get the same feeling from the way this is cut. And my problem with the editing is, holy shit, slow down. Every shot feels like you got the end of it chopped off to get another angle in there at the last minute. And it means that the movie doesn't let you appreciate the really neat moments. And this breakneck tumbling over itselfness permeates a lot of the film. The characters are another very mixed bag part of this film. I really don't like Rey in this movie specifically, and I can't pinpoint exactly what aggravates me about this character. I think a big part of it is this bitchiness Daisy Ridley puts into the role. There's nothing wrong with characters that are kind of dicks. One of the best characters in this franchise is known for being kind of a dick, but I don't think Ridley had the chops to play a role like this back in 2015. Honestly, I feel like this is the reason there was so much pushback on Rey when this movie came out. But the other 2 leads are fucking great. Finn works so well because his character in particular plays well off of the others. He's the most unique character in the movie, a fun mix between Han Solo and Jules Winfield, but a more naive take on both of them. To me, he works as a weird mirror of Han, as both characters are trying to overcome their tendency to run away when the going gets tough. Poe Dameron is honestly the best of our core 3. He's cocky as shit, but instead of being pure confidence like Han Solo, it's there covering up his fear, as you really only hear the cocky shit when he's in a precarious situation. I love his rapport with Finn, and I don't know how Disney thinks these 2 have more chemistry than these 2. The sequence where the 2 of them escape the Star Destroyer is genuinely one of the best scenes in the sequel trilogy. Kylo Ren is a badass in a unique way to any other Star Wars villain. We have had evil villains, we've had angry ones, but we've never had one who destroys an entire fucking room with his lightsaber out of blind rage. This is the face of a man who means fucking business. And the sound design of the mask, god damn, that's the shit.
No one has been able to get out of you what you did with the map.
And the sound design of the saber,
oh yeah.
He has a monstrous presence. He's a new kind of threat. There's none of the general-like qualities of Darth Vader or Dooku. There's none of the corrupt diplomacy of Sidious. All we have is a pure demon. and it's great. And Adam Driver gives a performance that's better than this movie, if we're being honest with ourselves. Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford still have the most amazing chemistry. Their scenes together are some of the highlights of the movie. They have more understanding of these characters in Star Wars than anyone else on set, and it shows. They give performances that transcend the script and just feel so natural. Han Solo and Leia Organa feel like people we've known forever, because they are, and the movie has a veneration of that. Now we have to talk about how goofy as shit the script is. I mentioned earlier how the editing makes the pacing feel like it's rolling down a cliff face. Well, this film's script is a runaway freight train, one that's missing one of its back wheels and sending off sparks the entire time. There's nothing wrong with fast pacing. Wes Anderson is one of my favorite directors, and his efficiency of storytelling plays a big part in that. But this movie is so fast paced that sometimes it just forgets to even show important plot points to us. The biggest examples are the relationship between Han and Rey and Finn's running away arc. Han and Rey literally have 15 to 20 minutes together, and Han already pulls up. Join me. This viewing, it felt like it came out of nowhere. Han and Chewie honestly seem like they're doing fine, and you've only flown with Rey once. I don't care if you get along, Han Solo doesn't do this. And regardless, Rey immediately says no without even really entertaining the thought. So nothing about the relationship changes, yet the movie tries to keep verbally driving home that Rey sees Han as a father figure when they haven't confirmed it through the actions of the characters. So let's talk about Finn now. This film decides after the first act that he's running away from everything. And I say decides because nothing about how Finn is established would indicate that he would be a runner. Finn is introduced like this. This doesn't read to an audience as I'm afraid of all this danger and want to run away to get to safety. This reads as pure horror at the moral crimes he's being forced to commit, and thus Finn running from the First Order feels like him choosing not to stay with the side of the battle that commits mass murder and instead joining and helping the good side. You know, like that time he broke the best pilot out of a Star Destroyer. Now the rest of his story arc seems to fall apart since the movie doesn't establish the beginning of the arc and instead just starts during the climb. And I might as well bring up something fundamentally stupid about this movie. Remember this line in the opening crawl? You probably don't, and honestly, J.J. Abrams probably didn't want you to, because this line breaks this entire movie in half. First Order is the fucking rebellion. This big scary army is for all intents and purposes the Rebel Alliance adjacent in Force Awakens. And not only that, but the Resistance has the government on their side. But you might be asking, why does this matter? Well, I've got 3 pretty big ones for you. 1, so you have the support of the Republic, and I would assume their military arsenal, and you said one dumbass to Jakku. Not even like one guy on the ground and then a squadron waiting in case he needs support. Like literally one dude, one ride, and you thought that was chill? Despite knowing there's a big scary army that might also be interested in a map to Fire Lord Ozai, great leadership. Number 2, so the First Order rose from the ashes of the Empire or some shit, right? How? You're telling me that the Republic didn't keep tabs on these dudes? And sure, maybe they did, but how do you fuck up enough to miss this shit? I feel like carving out a planet would attract some attention. 3, how did they train these guys? Like, where do you
Programmed from birth.
an entire army of stormtroopers without somebody figuring shit out? Or build these ships? I don't think Star Destroyers are easy to just hide somewhere. It takes money and resources to build all this. How did no one in the government notice this? Here's the thing about this kind of stuff, though. I can overlook it. For the most part, this movie is entertaining despite its flaws. And Star Wars has always been dumb as shit. Return of the Jedi is literally about the Empire straight up building a second Death Star, so honestly I can get past it if the movie itself is enjoyable. So yeah, The Force Awakens is a pretty decent movie.
I can explain. Let me explain.
You are all gonna have to hear me out here. Last Jedi is my favorite of this trilogy, and I have a bunch of reasons why. The biggest factor is the filmmaking itself. Rian Johnson, whether you like what he does with his writing or not, is a good-ass filmmaker, and the best part is he knows it. Rian Johnson doesn't need quick cuts and cameras zooming around to make things interesting. Instead, Last Jedi, especially its action set pieces, have a tangible energy to them. And Rian knows when he has a shot or a sequence that is absolutely the shit, and he lets you soak in it. The opening sequence with the bombing is so exhilarating. The scene specifically with Rose's sister goes really, really hard. The forced FaceTime scenes are so interestingly designed, both sound-wise, and I like the way it was shot. The Red Room is ridiculous, and I love it. The chase on the horse rabbits was really fun. The snapping scene gives me chills. The fight in the Red Room was also dope as hell. The Lightspeed Ram is badass shit. Complain all you want about it, but it fits. And Rian has a knack for purposeful camera movement. The camera always moves right where it needs to be to give the scenes a flow to them. And his intercut editing of scenes also is great and makes for fun, multifaceted fights. But I also like a lot of other stuff. Time for a hot take. Luke Skywalker is pretty great in this movie. Honestly, the best stuff is split between these two characters. Luke is given an interesting story to grapple with as he has to come to terms with not only the death of the Jedi way, but also his own personal mistakes. It's kind of insane to me that plenty of people would genuinely rather watch a version of this character that is an ultra-powerful comic book superhero over this genuinely interesting and captivating Luke Skywalker. I think I like the twist here. Is it a good subversion of expectations that Luke is a gross old man that doesn't live up to Rey's expectations and therefore subverts them? No, Yoda did that 37 years earlier. But from a story standpoint, I don't think it would make sense any other way. Think about how boring it would be if Rey got there and Luke was just immediately helpful. That Luke had been waiting for someone to get there and just ask for help. I like grumpy old hobo Luke that needs to be shown by a young, naive Jedi in training why the Force is important and the galaxy is still worth saving. And it leads to some beautiful, genuine scenes. I love his first training scene with Rey. I love the Yoda scene. I love the scene where Rey confronts Luke about what he did to Ben. I love Luke and Leia's interaction in the third act. And that final battle is cool as fuck. I think it's a really fun twist that Luke broadcasts himself as a Force something or other instead of actually showing up. Because yeah, this Luke wouldn't take on the First Order single-handedly. He mentioned that himself, but he realizes that the galaxy doesn't need the real Luke. They need the legendary Luke Skywalker, even characterized by his signature haircut. I like it a lot. Adam Driver is a phenomenal performer. Everything he does in this film is riddled with a tangible doubt in his abilities or his loyalty to the dark side, until he kills Snoke and that doubt is replaced with a blind rage. Lots of Star Wars movies have mentioned anger and hate in connection to the dark side, but this white boy is pissed. I love everything about this character down to, once again, that lightsaber is cool as shit. I think Rey works really well here too. Daisy Ridley is not a great actress, but I think Rian Johnson does a good job of using it in a better way. The way she's written makes her feel a bit more like a naive, but fundamentally broken and hurt person than just an asshole. And while we're here on this topic, we might as well talk about the Rey being a Mary Sue thing. Riddle me this, why are you complaining about Rey being a Mary Sue, but not about how Anakin Skywalker literally hopped onto a plane for the first time and blew up a space station, and also jumped off of a speeder and landed on another speeder, and also fought a beast in an arena with handcuffs on, and also pulled this gorgeous woman while spouting Nazi-ass shit? Because there ain't a lot of difference in these characters' backgrounds other than Rey being a woman.
Wait a minute, did I just catch you not respecting women?
So maybe that's just my read on the situation, but it just seems like a silly argument. And regardless, I like her a lot more as a character this time around. Poe is kind of cool as hell in this movie. I really like his storyline because he's such a good character. If you think about it for any time, it's clear that Poe's being a dick, but that's just a testament to how much this character works, because you side with Poe anyway. This whole subplot is really fun and I like it. Finn is interesting to me. A lot of the discourse surrounding this movie suggests that Rian Johnson was trying to hijack this franchise and was disregarding the foundation laid down by The Force Awakens, but honestly I feel like that wasn't actually in the plan and just kind of happened. A little bit of it comes from the irreverence this movie has for Star Wars as a whole, like Luke's tossing the lightsaber, the First Order being dumbasses, but something this movie still retains is Finn's character arc. Because yeah, they never really satisfied it. Finn still is inclined to run, but he's torn between that and his love for Rey, and I think they honestly almost stuck the landing perfectly with this arc. Finn is afraid of his own past, and when he wakes up on a ship where said past is right on his heels, his immediate response is to run away, until he stopped. He soon is convinced to be a part of a plan that puts him face to face with his own past until he directly combats it. And after defeating this fear, he has finally completed this arc. And in theory, this is the moment when his sacrifice would mean the most. Except... Why the fuck you do that? Rosa is the basis of pretty much every problem I have with The Last Jedi. She is a bad character who throws a wrench into a bunch of good things in this movie. Rose from the start just frustrates me. From a purely audience perspective, you can't tell me that a normal audience in 2017 was sold on this character. Something about fanboys and fangirls in movies has always been kinda weird to me, and a lot of that has to do with films that base villains on that idea, but it also comes from how uncomfortable fan and creator interactions are in real life. Taylor Swift's existence has proved this point, and I would try to justify Rose as almost a critique of the rabid fan archetype, but the movie tries to make us care for her too much for that to work. In all honesty, the time on Casino Planet isn't all in all a bad sequence, except for shit like this.
I wish I could put my fist through this whole lousy, beautiful town.
Oh, fuck yeah, this is the shit! Kill me now!
I don't like this. It feels oddly disingenuous, which is a sentence I don't find myself using to describe Rian Johnson films, especially since these themes of class struggle and systematic oppression have been executed fantastically in his work since. We're gonna put a pin in this and come back to it. This whole idea doesn't really need to be in this movie since it begins and ends with this sequence. You could just as easily edit this out like it had never been there, which is kind of the opposite of what you want out of a side plot in your movie. And then we have this dumbass shit. I'm sorry, Ryan, but this is just dumb. I get that you wanted to give Finn a different love interest, since A, Finn and Rey have no chemistry, B, you wanted a pseudo-romantic thing with Kylo Ren and Rey, and C, Rey and Finn weren't really together in this, but come on, he's right there! To me, this is an odd mirror of the Han Solo argument about the original trilogy. The difference is that there is an argument to be made for Han Solo not dying, whereas there isn't really one for Finn. Han Solo not dying at least gave us a really fun first act of Return of the Jedi, and a somewhat more satisfying conclusion to Han and Leia's relationship. But Finn's death would have just made more sense. It would have been a powerful emotional moment that would have set up a dark place for the 9th film to start. It would have given a character whose story had run its course a final heroic moment. And it's not like Finn has anything important to do in the next one. Damn it, Michael! If we're going to talk about The Last Jedi, we have to talk about the subversion of expectations. It's a term that gets tossed around a lot in relation to Rian Johnson's filmography, and especially with this movie. It's definitely a mixed bag. The biggest one that works is the clear shift in tone between this and other Star Wars films. This was definitely made with a more comedic tone in mind, and honestly, it works great. This is without a doubt the most intentionally funny Star Wars. Another thing that really worked for me was Snoke being killed. I got a little cathartically from it. I loved watching Snoke get excited about Kylo killing Rey, just for Kylo to kill him. I also like that it puts the franchise in an interesting position. Because of this, the final film should have been something very interesting, and it's really exciting. And to be honest, I think a lot of what doesn't work about The Last Jedi just comes from how much Rian Johnson has to say, both contextually and metatextually, about Star Wars. I think that's where the class struggle themes kind of got muddled. He wanted to say so much about Star Wars, but he only had one movie, something he likely knew going in, so he tried to condense all these ideas and criticism and concepts and themes into one movie, and there's so much more to talk about. I could praise Carrie Fisher and how much I love every scene with her. I could go in more depth on multiple scenes I really liked. I could mention some of the other little twists and creature designs and production value I liked. But this segment is already the longest one I've written, and I want to leave some things for future videos. But all in all, I really like The Last Jedi.
It's so gratifying to leave you wallowing in the mess you've made. You're screwed.
Rise of Skywalker is bad. Like, really bad. Strap in, this is gonna be a doozy. It is everything that people who don't like Star Wars think Star Wars is. Mindless, moronic noise full of flashing lights and people screaming about nothing in a movie that makes no sense. And yeah, that's exactly what this is. Any restraint and groundedness in previous films is completely gone. This movie justifies its own insanity with the Force so much that it's comical after a while. Because it turns out when you have an all-knowing, all-powerful Force, you never write yourself into a corner. Check out all these new features of the Force. Now you can heal something by placing your hand on it. Suck someone else's life force away. Steal something from someone you are having a Force FaceTime call with. Have a lightsaber battle with someone on said Force FaceTime call. Use the Force to move shit as a Force ghost. Interact with physical objects as a Force ghost. Teleport a lightsaber to someone else. Summon a lightsaber to you. And of course, resurrect someone with the Force. Speaking of resurrection, guys, Palpatine is back! You know, after this happened. Palpatine is so clearly an obvious ploy to just fan service all their problems away. And yeah, I love Sheev and he gets pretty goofy. Unfortunately, that doesn't work because the movie isn't entertaining enough for its moronicness to be ignored. His return retroactively makes Return of the Jedi seem like it didn't matter because whoop-de-doo, the motherfucker's just back magically. Palpatine's return is so dumb they don't even have a real explanation.
Dark science. Cloning. Secrets only the Sith knew.
Yes, the meme is the entire reasoning. He just is back, and it isn't questioned or anything, and we just have to roll with it. And this formula happens over and over and over and over and over and over and over. This script is one of the most nonsensical things I've ever watched, and I've seen Rob Zombie's output. Let me just take you through the plot to explain what I mean. The movie starts with Kylo Ren murdering a bunch of random guys on a random planet, both of which aren't explained. He moonwalks into someone and then picks up a triangle and scoots over to another random planet that does have a name called Exegol. And there he meets the Emperor. And the Emperor says the thing to explain why he's back.
The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural.
Shut the up. And then he just lifts a giant fleet out of the ground that he somehow made with this one chimpanzee-ass motherfucker that fixes Ben Solo's helmet. Then we cut to the Resistance, where after f***ing around for a while, we get told that Palpy Boy's back, which we know, but they want to make sure you get it. Do you get it? He's back. He's back. So then we get told what the basic plan of the next 2 hours is. We gotta go to the planet to find the thing, to find the thing, to find the planet, to find Palpatine. So they go to a sand planet, and Kylo Ren and Rey have a Force face chat, and Ren steals her necklace using Force magic and gets it analyzed within 3 seconds. Like, we see him get the necklace, cut away to Rey telling the gang the First Order knows where they are. 5 seconds later, come back to an officer saying that they have tracked it back to this planet. Cut back again just a few seconds after the last shot of the good guys. This is good filmmaking. Then we get into a chase between the good guys and some stormtroopers to get to the ship to find the dagger that finds the wayfinder that finds the planet where Sheev is. And here I noticed a pattern in the dialogue. The characters don't really have like true dialogue in this movie. There's basically only exposition and witty one-liners, except they aren't witty, they're just dumb. Most of these one-liners are just odd because they don't really fit into anything well. They feel less like a thing a person says and more like something you'd put on a shitty Star Wars t-shirt.
Never underestimate a droid!
The only ones that work are just the things C-3PO says, because somehow this man was on fucking fire the entirety of this movie. I missed C-3PO's bitch ass. Anyways, they get away from the stormtroopers that fly now. They fly now. And they get sucked into some quicksand. Then Rey heals a snake underground by giving some Force energy to the snake. Is that not how anything in the Force works? You give some Force energy to a rock and it hurtles towards a nearby planet and everyone dies. And then they find the dagger that finds the wayfinder that finds the planet where Sheev is. And then they get out of the underground tunnels and get on a ship. But before they can get on a ship, Rey has to be a dumbass. And we get to another wonderful example of this movie's stellar writing. So Chewie goes out to tell Rey to get her punk ass back on the ship. And he gets nabbed by the Knights of Ren. Then Finn decides to go find both of them and sees Chewie get on board a ship. Then Rey fucks up Kylo's TIE fighter. Their ship takes off and Finn yells that Chewie is on the ship. Rey and Kylo fight over it, then Rey gets big mad and lightnings the ship into oblivion. They played up the next scene like Chewie's dead, but actually was on a different cruiser somehow. But did Finn actually see him get on the ship? Or was the other one just magically really close by and they tricked him? Like, where did this happen? And either way, what was the fucking point of this? By the time we can even process what happens, they've already shown us Chewie's okay, so why did you do this? So now the First Order has the dagger, but luckily C-3PO has it memorized. But he isn't allowed to spew its Sith rhetoric until he gets hacked. So they take him to a person Poe used to know to get him hacked. And we run into Zora, a character who within 30 seconds goes from wanting to kill Poe to begrudgingly taking them to the best character to get 3PO hacked. So then the gang decides to pop on over to the First Order ship to go rescue Chewie, who Rey knew was alive because of the Force or something. And Rey goes to the room with the Vader helmet to get the dagger and has a Force video chat lightsaber battle. And Ren tells her that she's a Palpatine. And then they save Chewie and move on to their destination they got from 3PO. Endor.
This is literally my childhood.
Time for some more stupid shit. The fucking dagger lines up with the wreckage of the Death Star. Like, none of it moved. Like, it's in water, but, like, none of it moved. Okay, cool, whatever. They find some ex-stormtroopers, and Rey runs off to the Death Star wreckage to find the Sith triangle. But she sees herself but evil for some reason, and also Kylo Ren shows up. They fight, and Leia dies somehow, and then Rey stabs Kylo and immediately heals his pancreas. Then they fuck off to Exegol and fight the Emperor in his live studio audience for like an hour. Rey does some magic tricks, and Ben Solo gets chucked into a bottomless pit, except, no, he's chill, he crawls back out. Apparently defeating the Emperor is so tiring that Rey just fucking dies, and Ben resuscitates her with the Force, and then he dies, and also they kiss for some reason.
Nasty!
And also it's like half dead, so it's like kind of necrophilic. And then they go back home and celebrate their victory, and Rey goes off to get adopted by Luke and Leia or something. Honestly, the biggest problem this movie faces is the fact that it just moves like a rocket blasting off. It actually helps a lot on the first viewing. It moves so fast you can't even comprehend how moronic what you're being shown is before the next 3 scenes have happened. Then you get interactions so short that they have almost no meaning. These characters don't don't even act like characters, they're just meat sacks that tell us what we need to know to understand the surface level plot. It moves so fast that it can't even set up suspense, because before it can, the movie has already satisfied that suspense. There's so many subplots and ideas that just get left out in the open. There's this little droid who has no reason to exist. The Knights of Ren were just kinda there. There's the weird return of Rey and Finn's one-sided romance. There's Poe confronting his past for like 15 seconds. There's Finn's relationship with these stormtroopers. All of these ideas just get hung out to dry as loose ends, never to be connected. And there's still more to think about how unbelievably fucked up this entire movie is, and I probably could talk about it in the future. But for now, Rise of Skywalker might very well be the worst Star Wars movie. And a really good time to watch with friends. Star Wars is a big, expansive beast of a franchise that you just seem to find more to talk about every single time. And there's, once again, a lot I could still talk about, but I want to give some closing thoughts about this big pile of film reels sitting in my living room. The prequel trilogy is a very interesting heap of shit because there really isn't much reason for them to be this bad. It didn't really have any of the hallmarks of a modern fuck-up. There wasn't drama between director and studio or between crew members, really. It wasn't delayed 1,000 times. It seemed like they really had come from a place of excitement to make a new Star Wars trilogy. I think the problem is that those intentions got muddled in a sea of new technology and new ideas. New tech is great, but I think Lucas got a little carried away making the prequels since almost everything is CG in the later movies. And new ideas are great, but I think the problem is that no one tapped Lucas on the shoulder and said, I think the part where Anakin commits mass murder is taking it a bit too far, because that's really what any of these movies needed. They needed someone to proofread George's scripts to make sure they actually make sense both plot-wise and character-wise. The original trilogy looks even better now than it ever has. They're such simple, effective films. They feel sure-footed in a way that none of its descendants ever could hope to be, and a big part of it is how fucking good their cast and crew was. You have Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, and Mark Hamill as your leads, with James Earl Jones in the sound booth as your villain. You have a rotation of expert cinematographers, a very clever and quick-thinking visual effects and design department, an incredible editing team, and you have Lucas at the helm with multiple of his friends and peers to make sure it works right. Pretty notoriously, Spielberg and De Palma both watched the rough cut of the original Star Wars and gave their thoughts. It takes conversations like that to make good movies, conversations I don't think they had with the other trilogies. Then we have the sequels. The sequels are more than anything a masterclass on how to not make a trilogy. Notice I didn't say plan. There's a consensus that the problem with the sequel trilogy is that there wasn't a plan, which there wasn't, but the original trilogy also didn't have a plan. There were ideas, but they didn't intend to make a full trilogy when they made the original Star Wars. But there was a kind of unified vision in the originals. There was agreement between all of the crew about what they were making. But with the sequels, there really wasn't, because Disney scrambled to gain back fans after both Force Awakens and The Last Jedi were met with division between the fandom. They needed to keep changing course, until they changed course so hard that they barely had a movie left afterwards. Star Wars feels like a perfect example of how not to do a franchise in general. It shows both the problems with too much directorial control and too strict a vision, and the problems with a complete lack of it, whereas the originals seem to find a nice medium in between them. And on top of that, these films feel like a masterclass in filmmaking. You can analyze Empire Strikes Back to see how to achieve greatness, or you can analyze Attack of the Clones and not do any of those things. I want to share with you a very interesting thing about Star Wars that isn't about the films themselves, and that is the fandom at large. Star Wars is unique because it's simultaneously very niche and mainstream. We have both the comic book geeks and the popcorn munching crowd all in one big fandom, and they kinda all hate each other. Literally go find any Star Wars subreddit and you'll see people writing fucking essays explaining why said movie's good, or said show is hell incarnate, or why Ewoks should be hunted down and defeated. And in my time observing this fan base, I realized there is a clear scale of opinions here. On one end, we have people that see Star Wars as a goofy, dumb franchise that is only made for entertainment. And on the other is people that take Star Wars way too fucking seriously when, come on guys, they roll around in trash in the first movie. And because of this, you get these crazy divides of opinion. In other fandoms, you have a general consensus with a few outlying opinions that go against it. Not in Star Wars. Almost everything is split directly down the middle. And thus this argument rages on as fans can't agree on shit. And it really doesn't help anything. The Star Wars fan base is so tumultuous that there's only one film that's come off the ground in 5 years, and it's already being slandered just about everywhere. Hatred towards a certain facet of a franchise isn't new in fandoms, but Star Wars is so unbelievably targeted towards the people at the head. In a lot of ways, I feel really bad for Kathleen Kennedy since she's probably been given more death threats than I can count over trying to please a completely unpleasable fan base. And what is insane to me about these very zealous, mostly prequel-loving side of the fandom is that there is a complete lack of self-awareness. I read comment after comment about how the creators hate the fans, how they should listen to the fans, when goddammit, what do you think they've been doing? The modern Star Wars landscape is characterized by just giving the audience the same things they've seen before, whether it's characters, creatures, story beats, more. All they're trying to do is please the fans, and the reason the sequel trilogy is so disjointed is that they wanted to please everyone and made drastic changes based on fan reaction. But I don't want to end this review on a sour note, so I want to pay lip service to something that I kind of have to, given the nature of this video, and that is the Plinkett Reviews. If you've never heard of the Plinkett Reviews, it's a series of videos on the channel Red Letter Media that are some of the most in-depth film analysis ever to be put on YouTube. And the impact these videos have had on this platform are undeniable. Film content on YouTube owes itself directly to these videos, and specifically the way it interacts with the media it discusses. These videos are funny as shit, and they treat the prequels as a joke to be laughed at, a concept that has been used time and time again. These videos are referenced up and down the internet. I myself directly ripped off some of their jokes and used some of the clips from those videos in this video. If you haven't seen any of them, I have a link to them right in the corner. I implore you to watch them. They are legitimately better made and more entertaining than the prequels themselves. At the end of the day, Star Wars is exciting. I really cannot wait for the next film because there isn't much to be argued about the impact of seeing one of these motherfuckers on the big screen. I, unlike much of the fan base that is tearing apart New Jedi Order, am not a racist, misogynistic prick, and am excited to hear a new voice in a franchise utterly dominated by white heterosexual men. And yeah, I do just want to hear this on the big screen again. Star Wars is dumb and silly and usually doesn't make sense, but I love it all the same. And I'm ready to follow this franchise, for better or worse, into the future. Now that this obscene video's over, I can finally take a break from talking about shitty blockbusters and talk about good movies. It's not like there's any other Lucasfilm trilogies from the 80s starring Harrison Ford that were inspired by old adventure serials and were bought by Disney after a weird addition to the franchise was made in the 2000s. Oh shit. So in a weird twist, this end card will probably sound better than the rest of the video because I just got a new mic after recording everything. So I don't care. I don't really care. Thank you for watching this 90-minute monstrosity. This video, I don't know if I expected it to be this long, but man, this was a 6-month journey to be sure. If you liked it, leave a like and comment something nice, since half the comments on this video will be people pointing out the inaccuracies. Actually in the comics, don't be that guy, because that guy is just annoying and does not affect what I do at all, except annoys me. So just don't do that. I wanted to update you guys. I have a Spotify now. You should check it out. It's linked in the description and on my channel page. I am working on an album. Hopefully I'll have it done within the next couple weeks, months, I don't know. But the first song and single is up on Spotify right now. Listen to it, because I think it's cool, but I don't know. I hope you guys have a great summer, because I probably won't see you for a while. Peace.